All right, I think we finally got live. Thank you, Google. Thank you, YouTube. Come through for me. All right. The welcome message. Just gonna give it a minute for people to find me. Ah, Sylvia found me. Hi, Sylvia. Yeah, been an interesting week, interesting weekend for me. This is going to be story time with Uncle Brent. Sylvia's kind of already up to speed on some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. We'll see who files in. I'm not really going to engage with the chat for the first little while, other than as we ease into story time here. Say hello as I notice people coming in. Grab your popcorn, grab your beverage. I got my coffee, my tea, glass of water. What we'll be discussing today, we got some kombucha. I got my cookies set out. I got a new camera, so let me know if the video, well, I can see the video quality is already better. Let me know if it sounds okay. I'm still using the sound on my laptop. Everybody said it was okay last time, so I'm going to go with that. I have no idea if there's other live streams going because I had a hard time. I had everything set up, ready to go, scheduled. I saw Sylvia poked in at the scheduled time, but then my cameras weren't working, and so I had to kind of back out and redo everything. But we're here now. Sounds good. Excellent. Service is spiraling. Dang. All right. That's no good. Well, we'll see if we can power through this. So I just answered text here. Suddenly when I need my attention here, that's when people need to get a hold of me. So. Yeah, I've got a new internet hookup, satellite, 100 megabits per second. I don't know if that's guaranteed or make-believe, but whatever. I thought my upload speed is going to handle this, but whatever. We'll make it work. I'm getting error messages on my YouTube stream. Anyways, we'll get into it. The topic of discussion today is going to be Lane Myers. There's been lots going on in that regard as far as breaking news and developments, and I haven't really been able to keep up with kind of the rapid unfolding of events. Lane is in jail right now. I've had my own issues here. I had house guests, and then my well pump malfunctioned on Friday. And so I've been troubleshooting that, trying to diagnose what the problem is so I can go get parts tomorrow because it's the weekend. Everything's closed here as far as those kind of control components that I need to get my water going again. So I've been without water for the last 2 days, and we're managing. And then I was in a big shitty yesterday visiting mom and dad. And on the way home, I had a tire blowout. Now, it didn't go flat, but the tread separated and blew apart on the highway in 60 miles an hour. And so there was a big explosion, but I was still able to drive home. It was a slow roll, 20, 30 miles an hour on the back roads. So the trip home took an extra hour or so. And so yeah, it's just been a weekend to forget. And I've seen other people covering the Lane Myers situation. John Felix, I saw, was live with both Foshin and Reluctant Prophet. Mark Kelly, the Reluctant Prophet, was streaming on the weekend. I haven't been able to watch all the coverage. I'm trying to get up to speed on the details of what's happening. And this is a public service, has been streaming just to kind of get everybody apprised on the latest details of what's going on. And I'm not really going to go into that today. I really wanted to discuss kind of the Lane Myers story as I've been privy to it. For those that are maybe unfamiliar with what's going on in Tucson, Arizona with the courts, and so it is a bit of a story, and it's a very interesting one. It's compelling because I've been watching it for about a year, the events and the trials and tribulations and the hearings and the motions, and there's a lot going on. And what I've noticed over the last year is a lot of people are interested in this story, and they kind of get involved at some point, and it's like they're like, this isn't a fault because this is the internet. We're all trying to cover the story and get to the bottom of the details and follow what's going on. But Lane has probably published on YouTube in the last year close to 1,000 hours of videos, and mostly live streams at this point. And it's difficult to kind of jump in midway and really grasp what's going on because it's extremely complicated as far as his various lawsuits, his strategy. And so I'll kind of go back to the beginning of how I discovered him. It's kind of my inclination every spring, to when tax time comes around, to start looking at legal type content on the internet, whether it's YouTube or whatnot. And so I think it was around this time last year I came across like First Amendment auditing and cop watching as a YouTube genre. And then there were people like Steve Leto and civil rights lawyer and others that were covering current cases and things that were in the news. And so it was all very interesting. And so then one day on the sidebar on YouTube there, it was a suggested video of a pro se litigant deposing this New Mexico state policeman. So it was like a 3-hour deposition, but I watched it, and it was Lane deposing Angel Moreno, the New Mexico state trooper that arrested him for trespassing on a public campsite, public campground in New Mexico. And so I hit play and started watching, and I could tell right off the bat, like, okay, this guy is pro se, meaning he's representing himself in court. And there was a level of knowledge and finesse and the ability to handle a witness, which that's what he was doing. He was questioning the officer as to the who, what, why, and where of all the events relating to his arrest on that day and subsequent charges that were brought by Prosecutor Kent Walquist. And so that was a fascinating watch. I don't know if I watched it all in one sitting at that time, but what I could see is like this guy's got something going on as far as his ability to handle himself in legal matters. And so from that, I think I found the Doug Downey deposition, who was the person who made the original complaint at the New Mexico campsite, and he's actually an employee of a contractor that the U.S. Forest Service uses to manage the facility. And so Doug Downey is not a public employee. He's not. He doesn't carry any authority to speak on behalf of the government, and it was a matter of Lane being Lane, who can be abrasive, perceived as aggressive, but really he was just standing up for his rights. And I guess egos prevailed, and Douglas Downey, who was the camp manager at the time, not even a manager, he was kind of the facilities host, responsible for collecting fees and keeping the toilets clean and just being on site to handle whatever may come up. And so Lane and his wife, newlywed, were at the campsite it was the July long weekend of 2022. So this is almost 2 years ago that this all happened. And the New Mexico State Police were called in and basically attempted to trespass. Well, they charged him with trespassing and arrested him. And ended up driving Lane around for 8 hours in the back of the state trooper's police car before putting him into a facility to incarcerate him until he was bailed out. I don't know if that was a 24 or 48 hour stay. I mean, all this is documented on his YouTube site, and I'll put links in this description. And so you can kind of look this stuff up, and then people in the chat, if you want, you can kind of comment for those that are going to be coming in or watching the chat later, just filling in details. And so once I'm done the story time, we can kind of talk together. You can maybe correct any mistakes I make along the way, because the details are rather specific and numerous in all this legal wrangling that's going on. But in any case, in the New Mexico case, this has been going on almost 2 years. So there have been a number of hearings. Lane has had various forms of representation. He had a team of lawyers handling the case, which he ended up dismissing just over a month ago. And so there's as well have been a number of judges that have been looking after this case. And so this is in the New Mexico First District in Los Alamos. And so there is actually a hearing, well, the pretrial hearing and the hearing is scheduled for this week on March 25th and 27th, so this Tuesday and Thursday. Lane is currently in jail in Tucson, pending the latest felony charges. But, for those of you in the States, maybe you can kind of let me know whether this New Mexico matter is going to be automatically whether there's a continuance or there has to be a filing for a continuance, because I believe Lane is expected to be there in person, not on Zoom. There's jury selection going on and whatnot. But anyways, we're kind of jumped all the way to the end of the story. But in any case, there's been all kinds of lawfare being used against Lane in the New Mexico charges. You can look up his, or at least a record of the filings, the court filings, if you go to the New Mexico website for justice and look up First Circuit, and you can click on, I believe it's the public records, and it will show all the pending cases that are being heard. And so this one is being argued before Kathy, what's her last name, guys? Should know this. Here, I've got the Kathy Taylor. Catherine Elizabeth Taylor. So she's a former prosecutor, and we've talked about this in other, not live streams, but in some of my other videos. You know, it sounds like she's an individual that came right out of law school, became a prosecutor, or went to work for the government fairly early. So she was a prosecutor in California, and then ran to be elected as judge in New Mexico. And so she's kind of biased with the idea, or I would presume that, you know, if somebody's been charged with a crime, they're to be treated as a criminal. And so the latest hearing in front of Kathy was March 5th, and it seemed quite clear that she wasn't hearing or necessarily paying much attention to the motions that Lane had filed. But we'll get to that later. So anyways, there's a bunch of shenanigans going on in New Mexico as far as delaying Lane's access to fair trial, justice. And we'll talk about that a little more, but just hold that in the back of your mind that the New Mexico charges were kind of how I discovered Lane, but he hasn't really started talking about them because the case has been in limbo for virtually the last year and a half. There was those depositions that Lane did online of the arresting officer and the camp host, Douglas Downey. And then he's been trying to subpoena these people, but Angel Moreno has since located to Texas, and Kent Walquist hasn't been forwarding the proper contact information so the subpoena can be served to appear. And then Douglas Downey, nobody knows where he is. He's possibly somewhere in New Mexico, but he's been unable to be served because Kent Walquist has submitted his witness list in a very shady kind of way. And the evidence he plans to call a trial. And so in watching most of this, like I can't say I've watched every minute of every live stream. Lane has a tendency to get very repetitive, so it can get hard to watch. And as well, like Lane is one of those individuals, like I relate to him, but there's things he says and does is like, it's not that I don't like it, but it's not good YouTube content, so it's kind of exhausting watching sometimes. So that's not a slight or casting shade on Lane in any way. It's just when you get repetitive, it's like, okay, I start tuning out. And so sometimes he'll go live and talk about stuff he's talked about 10 times already, and I'm just there to hang out and chat, and you get the sense sometimes that nobody's even paying attention to Lane as he's reading through a motion or whatever the reason for the live stream is. At other times, he's the most engaging, entertaining, humorous one-man show there is. Like it's like the Gong Show on steroids, for lack of a better term. So at times it's like the best content you'll find on YouTube, possibly in the history of Western civilization. And I have a particular interest. Like once I started, like the hook for me, and I explained this in a previous video, is I've looked at how to go about obtaining justice for yourself in the current paradigm, the current system, the current structure that we live under. And I've kind of seen it all, whether it was the free man on the land movement. I wasn't so familiar with the Montana free man kind of movement, but the sovereign citizen stuff, looking at all manner of people talking about their methods. And what I saw in Lane is he's taking their laws, their system, and knowing it inside out and using it against them. And this was kind of unique in that Lane has an incredible ability to process information. It seems he's said in the past that he has somewhat of a photographic memory, so he can read stuff and recall it fairly well. But to me, it's really the requirement is hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of study. And when you're done studying for all that time, you study some more. And then it doesn't hurt that your wife is an experienced lawyer. She's worked at the federal level. She's worked for judges. She's an asset, and he knows people. He knows how to get access to the information or advice he needs, as well as having an account to Westlaw. And so I was looking into this. I mean, this is the tool that lawyers use. It's an online service. We have that up here in Canada as well. And it basically allows you to structure your case electronically. And as a tool, it's wonderful if they had like an open source platform like that you could use. But currently, I think the American fee for a subscription is somewhere around $800 a month for the basic account. I haven't looked into pricing up here, but like if you've got 1 or 2 traffic tickets a year, it's kind of not worth it to get a Westlaw account. But if you're kind of going head to head with the government on challenging the kangaroo system, well, it's a good investment, justifiable. So in any case, I don't have access to Westlaw. I just use internet tools and I've been watching for the last 15 years or so this genre on YouTube of people publishing information on the internet and trying to learn. And in Lane, I recognize, okay, he's got something going on in that he knows procedure far better than anyone I've ever seen. And that has been really the missing key for me, is like, okay, it's one thing to know the letter of the law as they write them in the acts and statutes and codes that are published or available, generally for free everywhere on government sites. But you got to dig if you're looking for, the rules of civil procedure at the various levels, whether it's a district court or administrative court, or circuit court. Federal courts are different from state courts, and so on and so on. They all have their different rules. And Lane has got a grasp of these rules almost far better than most experienced lawyers that you'll see. And so in order to do what they're doing to them, they have to, I guess, find rules that they can argue before a judge that the judge is going to say, yeah, that's the rule, so I'm going to go with what you said. And you kind of are at the mercy of the integrity of the system. So it is frustrating, but Lane has been kind of the people's champion that we've been looking for, in that he's got this incredible processing speed. He's got this ability to communicate, whether it's in court or through motions, what he needs to say to the court in order to get your arguments heard. but he keeps running up again and again against prosecutors, judges that are kind of playing willfully ignorant as to how the laws of, or the rules of the court actually ought to be applied. So there's kind of a Lane Myers rule, and then kind of a rule for everybody else. So he does seem to be getting unequal treatment under the law. Now, let's go back in time. About 2 years previous to the New Mexico case, Lane had litigation going on in his home state of Michigan. And he's only talked about that case just prior to New Year's. He was doing a number of videos on the situation in Newaygo County. And it's a very similar situation to what he encountered in New Mexico, in that the Newaygo County administrator and council were attempting to trespass him, prevent him from using public land, and he ended up winning his case at the, I believe it was Michigan Supreme Court level. I forget which circuit court that covers. I'm not going to be looking up stuff on the internet here as we go. I'm not going to be sharing my screen. Maybe we could try later on, but I want to get through this story. And this might take a little bit yet. Anyway, I got stuff to do, so I don't know how long we're going to go, but we'll go until it makes sense. But anyways, he prevailed as far as judgment, and that resulted in case law, Myers versus Christopher Wren, who was likely still is, the county administrator there. Like, just to make a comparison, I'm in Canada, so what you guys would call a county, we would call a municipality where I am. There are provinces in Canada, like Alberta, where they do still call it counties. There's townships, but we don't typically have a county sheriff department here. Most everything is, for law enforcement, is contracted. Each municipality contracts with the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as their police force. So there's kind of a reciprocal agreement. Even though the RCMP is federal, the provinces and municipalities have this agreement to use them as a police force as opposed to a private police force or a town police force. Some locations will hire their own officers and issue tickets and enforce ordinances, but typically in the rural areas, it's RCMP. The big cities like Winnipeg and Brandon, where I am, close by, they have their own police forces. But in the smaller communities, and from the sounds of like Newaygo County, they had the county sheriffs. We don't necessarily have like a county sheriff. Even like you have a state police force, we don't have that. It's all done by the RCMP here in Canada. So just kind of give you a glimpse into what the different systems look like. The functionality is more or less the same. It's just the administration of it. Maybe it's a little more streamlined here. There's less to deal with. Various different levels of law enforcement and the courts. In any case, back to Newaygo County. So he prevailed in Newaygo County and is preparing a lawsuit for damages for essentially attempting to ban him from use of public land, taxpayer-funded land. And, the T-shirt in the depositions of New Mexico State Trooper Doug Downey, he's wearing his public land owner T-shirt that he got at some Utah State Park or something like that. So it's sending a message that to those people that are public servants that we the people own this land. You're serving at our pleasure and discretion, and we expect service, not attitude. You know? We have encounters with you. So in any case, I mean, that's just my personal bias coming through. I don't think there is an elite class of overlords that has the right to tell us what we can and can't do. We create statutes and then use lawfare against us when we break one of their alleged laws and become a criminal. So, in any case, we love Lane like a crazy brother. I do think of him as a brother. I mean, I have so much in common with him in shared interests. I mean, he's a little younger than I am, but I've been able to connect with him through email, but through his live streams and through the chat. Like all the people, the community surrounding him are great people. You know, I haven't got to know Mark Kelly much, but I'm aware of his situation. We'll be talking more about him. You know, I was going to be holding off on doing this treatment of Lane until after his New Mexico hearing this week, just because I don't want to speak out of turn or cause anything that might make his legal challenges more challenging. But at this point, he's in jail and needs to get out. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. What can be done there. But in any case, in the New Mexico charges, he's basically arguing the same case law that was established in the Nuevo County case, and which is, you know, his right to access public land, and the false arrest, false imprisonment, false charges, the prosecutorial misconduct that's been taking place, the inability to access due process. Like, there's so much going on there, and Lane has been on top of them every step of the way, but the courts have decided to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to his pleas, or his pleadings and his motions. So that being what it is, the real, I guess, focus in the last year has been what's going on locally with him in Tucson. And so it started with an incident at O'Reilly's Auto near Lane's home, where he was attempting to purchase a catalytic converter, and for whatever reason they didn't supply the bolts for the installation, and so between him and the clerk there was a little bit of tension going on, and his demeanor was perceived as threatening, such that the police were called. Now, all of this is on video. Lane's gone through it in excruciating detail. There were no threats made. There was no laws broken. But Lane was arrested for disorderly conduct, trespass, you know, just all the usual kind of fakey charges that people get when they're feeling butthurt and someone actually stands up for his rights. And so Lane was involved in this case involving O'Reilly's, and the staff there, which involved Jordy, I forget his last name, and Mackenzie O'Brien. She was kind of taking center stage. At first she was a witness, but then she became a plaintiff in the case, and so it was all very, very ambiguous there. Officer, I believe it was Dan Deloria, was the arresting officer, and he is actually on the Brady list, which is your bad boy list for welcome in to the newcomers. We're just in the middle of the Lane Myers epic story, my retelling of it, just kind of giving a greater context as to what's been going on with Lane Myers in the last few years. I'm not really looking at the chat too closely right now because I want to get through the story and then we can engage and chat it up together. So if you have questions, kind of just hold on to them for now. You can chat amongst yourselves. if you got something going on, but I'll just welcome Art. Art, Percy Bob, Percy, Ant. Is it Ant? My eyes are bad. Wasamata is here. Hello, hello. All right. Wasamata you is here. We can all relax. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, it's been such a busy week. I haven't even had any time to look for Sasquatches or nothing here. So, anyways, there were these kind of fakey charges that Deloria put on Lane, and so he was really a desk sergeant, or he was a detective. Like, he wasn't supposed to be really on the street making arrests based on the status of things he had done in the past in his career that got him on the Brady list. Like, he was really, he kind of did a no-no in arresting Lane, and he subsequently was disciplined for this whole affair, and nobody exactly knows where he is. And the prosecutors at the time, like Matt Walker, that name is going to come up again, as well as his wife Shannon Walker, who's kind of central to the events that have Lane in jail currently. But the prosecutors appear to have been hiding the witnesses and Officer Deloria from being depositioned by Lane, because it wasn't going to look very good for the Tucson police, of whom Deloria worked for. It wasn't going to look good on getting Mackenzie O'Brien on the stand and Jordy on the stand, and whoever else was to be called. So those charges ended up getting dismissed. I kind of gave away the ending. But while those charges were pending and hearings were scheduled and injunctions were being filed against Lane, and by that it's like a restraining order, what we call a temporary restraining order, or injunction against harassment. It's called different things in different jurisdictions. Here in Canada we call it a restraining order or a temporary restraining order. And my apologies, folks. I've been doing a lot of talking in the last few days, and so we'll see how far my voice will go. It's already starting to get a little icky. Maybe a kombucha will help. So while all this O'Reilly's malarkey is taking place, Lane decides to go to a town council meeting in Tucson, and I guess the plan was to go and speak during the public forum time, or public comment, or community comment time, and so there were some preliminaries where they were holding some kind of award and recognition for either, I forget if it was first responders or paramedics or hospital staff. There was some kind of, it might have been some gender identity ceremony, but in any case, the rules of decorum in these meetings is you're not allowed to disrupt, and so there's, again, a Lane Myers rule kind of concocted on the spot, where during the time when people were applauding after the presentation, or after a speaker finished speaking, or the award was awarded, people in the audience were applauding, and Lane was sitting towards the back of the audience, quietly booing. Boo! It was audible, and the judge, or not the judge, the mayor, Regina Romero, if I'm remembering the name correctly, she gave a verbal warning from her seat that booing is not allowed. but it really made no sense, because if everybody's clapping and that's okay with the meeting decorum, and one person is booing, I mean, that's First Amendment protected speech. He wasn't booing over somebody who was speaking. He was booing when other people were clapping simultaneously. And so there was a warning that keep it up, and FAFO, keep booing. Whoever's booing, if you do it again, you'll be asked to leave. And so inevitably, the booing continued at the appropriate time when the audience was reacting to what was happening at the front. Lane would boo as others were applauding or cheering or whatever was going on. So it was completely non-disruptive, but the city lawyer, the mayor, they kind of made motions to the security detail in the meeting, which was, I believe, Tucson police. I don't think it was private security, but I believe it was Tucson police at the time. And Lane ended up getting arrested at that meeting. I forget if the charges were disorderly or trespass or refusing to. Again, these made up charges. There was no disruption of the meeting. There was no disorderly conduct. There was none of that. But in any case, he got himself an overnight stay in jail and a couple more charges, or 3 or 4 more charges. That's all fine. And at this point, I was kind of cluing in as to what Lane was doing, because he'd rack up some charges, he'd get arrested, this would happen, and he would start posting what was happening as a result of all these charges on his YouTube channel. So he was making plain for all to see, and he was doing it not by disclosing anything that was forbidden. He would get a public record request for the body cam footage of his arrest, records that are available to anyone, and he would post that on his YouTube and do a breakdown of this guy said this, did this. This was against their policy. It was against this ARS statute, Arizona bias statutes. It was against this. It was against that. It was either illegal, arrested, detained. This, like, he knows his stuff, and so he was educating his audience that were tuning into. At first, it was videos he was posting, hour-long videos. Just, this is what happened last week. Just wanted to share with you what's going on. And then he started doing live streams. So that came a little later. But around this time last year, he started emerging with these videos. And I kind of saw what he was doing. Like, he's making public all their misdeeds, their mistreatment of Lane Myers. And it's a brilliant strategy, and it's something I have looked at as a protection for some of the things it's not crimes I've committed. I mean, I'll do a whole video on the life and crimes of Brent Shimko. But as a protection against false witness, if you've got everything on video and it's all public record, you're just saying publicly what anybody else has the right to access and say publicly on the internet. The internet is our town square. It is, there are rules in place at YouTube. They have community standards and their guidelines and policies, and you can violate their policies. But really, YouTube has not said anything about anything Lane has published. In the sense that there's a danger of him losing the YouTube channel or any violations he's committed there. So it's all been excessive lawfare by the kangaroo system, seemingly in the state of Arizona and as well in other locations. So it kept escalating and escalating and escalating. So there were charges racking up, and Lane eventually went down to file paperwork with the courts, and he was greeted by U.S. Marshals and forbidden entry into, I forget if it was the Tucson Administrative Building or Pima County. Pima County is the county where Tucson is located, and eventually these charges got picked up by the Pima County prosecutor, as opposed to the Tucson City prosecutor. And we say the convolutions and the details are very difficult to follow. And I'm trying to follow a chronological timeline to make it easier for those that aren't familiar. But, he ended up with approximately 14 or 16 charges by the middle of September of 2023, including injunctions against harassment. And then the court appearances and the motions and the live streams started happening. And Lane took us along for every step of the ride or the journey, and it's been a roller coaster. There's been ups and downs, but by after 1 week, there would be 2 charges dismissed because there was the court could clearly see that this was not going to stand, or the prosecutor dropped the charges, but there were dismissals. He won in 1 day alone. There was both Mackenzie O'Brien and one of the, I believe it was Tucson legal staff, Stacy Jane, whether she was with the University of Arizona at the time or acting as with the prosecutor's office. They attempted injunctions against harassment, and they were both denied. Shannon Walker was able to get an injunction against harassment, and in the last month, that has been covered extensively. How sneakily she did it. She approached a judge. I would call it ex parte, but she sought an injunction based on lies, like demonstrable falsehoods that were said against Lane. A police report that alleged that Shannon Walker at one time was an ex-partner of Lane Myers, and so that just creates a whole new level of obfuscation, but also severity, with ex-partners and relationships in that way. And they have never had a relationship. Like it was fabricated, whether it was fabricated by Shannon or the person making the police report misheard or added something to the police report that's demonstrably false. Like there's lies and falsehoods in all these documents that you can find. And so one by one, these charges were dropped until by just before Christmas, all 16 of those charges had been dismissed. Now, some of them are an appeal because they were dismissed without prejudice, meaning the state could always pick them up again and attempt to press charges on the matter as well. But Lane had appealed for all charges to be dismissed with prejudice, so that's it. It's a done deal. So I think there was still some of these appeals hanging out there, but for our purposes, all the charges relating to Tucson were dismissed prior to Christmas. And then Lane started talking about, through that holiday week, he began talking about the ordeal with Christopher Wren in Newaygo County, and started picking up momentum for what was going on in New Mexico, because that case was coming up, or hearings were coming up for March. So through January and February, he was preparing his case to go against Matt Walquist. Ken Walquist. So many names. Like it's crazy, but Lane has been able to keep up. I mean, obviously he's going to be able to keep up because it's stuff that's happening to him. For us that are watching, it often gets confusing because there was a Matt Walker prosecuting, and then at one point there was a Samantha Walker prosecuting. I forget if she was at the Tucson Prosecutor's Office, or Pima County. But in any case, through that O'Reilly's case and through the booing at City Hall case, there was different judges that got involved that ended up having to recuse themselves. I don't know all the details of that, the reasoning why, whether it was conflict of interest or bias, but this has been kind of punted from judge to judge to judge. And at one point, Judge Alexander Francis Ball was involved, and there was a whole kerfuffle over that, and that Lane was essentially kidnapped at a hearing for contempt, and Lane broke down his understanding and rationale as to why that was an illegal arrest, and so there's potentially a pending lawsuit against Judge Ball. Again, I'm not speaking out of turn here. All this has been documented on Lane Meyer's channel for Nonviolent Social Change. And I'll put links in the description after the fact. At your leisure, you can look at this as much or as little as you want. But I have yet to hear somebody kind of walk through Lane's whole legal journey. But I do see people kind of jumping in the middle and attempting to help. And I saw that, with Chili DeCastro, was kind of jumping in the middle at the end of last year, wanting to help out with what Mark Kelly was going through and Lane Myers was going through. And it kind of came across as very unhelpful. And Mark Kelly and Lane Myers were kind of not antagonistic towards Chili, but there was kind of, again, it's not a casting shade on Chili. His heart was in the right place, but he needed to be a little more tactful and aware of the dynamics that was going on. It was interpreted that he was threatening to dox him or somehow make his life miserable, and that was not the intention at all. And I think for the most part that's been smoothed over, but I've seen others kind of attempt to get the grasp of what Lane is doing and what's been happening. But again, if you're talking about one case, but Lane's talking about a different case, because there's at any given time 7 different actions that he's dealing with, like, it gets very confusing very quickly. And you see that in Lane's live streams and other people trying to cover what's going on. It's like you need a whole semester of study just to get up to get on track with what's all happening. But the long and the short of it is Lane was preparing for this New Mexico case, and then suddenly, through either the end of February or sometime in March, a grand jury was convened in Arizona. And then there were 13 new charges that the grand jury was willing to indict him on in relation to the intimidation and fear of death and harassment of Shannon Walker, who is alleged to be Lane Meyer's ex-partner. And so he was brought in for a hearing, and this is where it gets a little muddy for me. The last week or two, this grand jury indictment and the charges that have been brought are 6 felonies and a number of misdemeanors. The exact numbers is kind of, it's been covered on other channels, and you can go back. So like I say, This is a Public Service has done a fairly extensive treatment, as well as Mark Kelly, a Reluctant Prophet channel, has covered this. And so I'm not going to go into all those details, other than the charges are related to Lane's YouTube channel. Lane has never been in contact with Shannon Walker. He's left her one voice message on her work phone, which anybody could look up online and leave her a message. I'm not even suggesting you do that. You can look up her email. He's sent her an email in relation to his action as a defendant and her relation to the public prosecutor at the time, the the Tucson prosecutor, Matt Walker, who is Shannon's husband. And like it just kind of snowballed into this pack of lies. Ended up getting Lane before a judge, released on his own recognizance as of last week, and then throughout the week, Lane appearing on YouTube, not addressing or not contacting Shannon Walker directly, but by posting videos on his YouTube, which is his First Amendment right, and the judge acknowledged. I believe it was Judge Rojas. Again, people in the comments or the chat can correct me if I'm wrong on any of these details, but they are just kind of details at this point. Just checking with the chat. Welcome, Tammy. I have to get with it. Yeah, well, like I'm not even saying I've got a full grasp of everything. There's still stuff that I'm not aware of going on. You can't know it all, but I have been following Lane's legal journey pretty extensively. Like I've got a fair grasp of what's happening. And again, what appeals to me is that Lane is basically using the strategy of weaponized trolling, showing the whole universe what these people are doing to him, and then poking fun of them at them for their dirty deeds. And this is what they need and deserve, for everyone to see what's happening to Lane Myers. He's said this before. If they could do this to me, they're going to do it to you. Just he is the canary in the coal mine. Whether he's the chosen one, I mean, you start to develop a complex, and I don't want to see him, kind of go off the rails in that. But Matt Walker has attempted to get a psych evaluation and every trick in the book. Like Matt Walker has done seminars for prosecutors on, I forget the website, I can post a link, but the ability to use disclosure and the rules of disclosure as a sword, as a weapon, and using the rules of procedure against defendants to get your prosecutorial merit badge, I guess. And so there, that speech that he gave to the Arizona, Council of Prosecutorial Lawyers, I think I got it wrong. I've got the link. I can post it. But if you've been watching Lane Myers' channel, you've seen that thing that's behind a paywall. So you can't even access it right now, although it ought to be a public record. So somebody should be able to do a public record request to get it out from behind the paywall, because Matt was speaking in his capacity as a public prosecutor. So that is his office, with the Tucson. But in any case, the details are, again, very convoluted, and it's no slight against anybody that's trying, sincerely trying to find out what's going on and help out. But I have seen over and over, like, people kind of come in without all the details or the majority of the details, and then they start misrepresenting what Lane is doing or what has happened, and not offering legal advice. And I'm not offering legal advice. I'm just giving a play-by-play of the battle. It is the irresistible force of Lane Myers against the immovable object of the authoritarian state apparatus. And so now we'll see who prevails. Like, I think they've kind of, like, this is black pill time. It doesn't look good. It seems like they've got him in a state of check in this game of chess. Foshin at This Is a Public Service channel, he has kind of said it's up to the judge. And so me as a Canadian, I don't think I'm going to be sending an email to the judge, because that would be like I'm interfering in your legal process. I don't know how I feel about that. If there are Americans watching and are okay with that, I would ask you, would you feel the same if it were someone from China interfering in your legal process? So I'm kind of reticent to contact the court, other than requesting that I give access to live streams, but it of the court proceedings. But I don't know if my browser is even capable of watching those live streams. But in any case, I don't want to exert pressure on your legal system as someone who's not even an American, at least not yet. That beautiful line between Canada and the U.S. Let's just get it out of there, right? We'll be the most beautiful country ever. Well, that's another live stream for another time. But in any case, you as Americans, I want to bring to your attention, like, you can potentially influence the judge and let him know, it's like, these charges are a sham. We're not going to stand for this. Like, we have rights, and we expect you to uphold them. And so that kind of gets to more of the black pilling ideology. Here in Canada, we have a constitution and Bill of Rights. It's almost as comprehensive as yours in the States, but in the United States, you've got a lot of thinkers that were great thinkers that were around during the time of the American Revolution. It was George Jefferson or Tom George Jefferson. Wheezy, where's my coffee? Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Samuel Adams, like Thomas Paine, all these patriots that were around that time, whether they were, Federalists or anti-Federalists, there was a lot of vigorous discussion about how we're going to operate this republic. And it just seems to me over time that's all deteriorated or evaporated. And these pieces of paper, these constitutions, these amendments, it almost seems like it's there to placate us into a sense that we do have rights, when in practical terms, everything I've observed it's just smoke and mirrors. It's basically to keep us on a chain, so that there is no Second American Revolution, or however you want to think of it. The revolution is going to be, using this electronic means of getting the truth out there. Maybe I take a sip. I think it's time for a cookie even. I'll just read the chat, see what you guys are talking about me behind my back. Yes, Tammy, a people's champion, absolutely. The magnetism Lane Myers has with a ton of people. Yeah, and I fully support him. I'm seeing the writing on the wall. If this judge allows him to sit in prison, he's got a hearing this week for a bond hearing, I guess, to determine when and if he can go free. But the case has to come before a judge at some point. Well, now that he's in jail, and as a pro se, like, he's his own lawyer, he's representing himself, and they found a means that there is no bond, there is no get out of jail, because they're alleging that what he did since being released on his own recognizance last time, he committed a felony with felony indictments, and so it's go to jail, do not pass go, and you're going to sit there until we come get you. but he doesn't have access to the tools he needs to prepare his case. So that puts him at a real disadvantage. But again, it's one of those procedure things that this latest lunatic prosecutor is attempting to use lawcraft against our beloved brother Lane. So, yeah, what's the solution? I guess that's kind of what this channel is all about. I was really cheering for Lane, but trying to be a dispassionate observer, but he is so engaging, and so inevitably, we have these wild discussions in the chat, and I've had the opportunity to have a bit of back and forth with Lane. I've been able to help out a bit. I came across that information about that change to Rule 122H that they were attempting to push through at the Arizona Supreme Court. So again, that's an American thing. I'm not going to respond to that petition because I'm not American, and I don't want to be meddling in your governmental affairs. I just unless somebody tells me I need to, that just sounds weird to me. I kind of wouldn't want Americans or people from any other country meddling what we got going on here in Canada. And I mean, our problems here are just as bad, not worse than yours, as far as kangarooism and lack of due process and corruption and all the things that the usual suspects are up to. And how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? So yeah, I kind of see storm clouds on the horizon, and so I'm attempting to prepare myself by not assembling a community to support me, but just having a channel so that people are aware that I exist, and that if and when a day comes that I need people to get behind me, well, at least people are aware of what's going on, because I'll hold up a camera to what's going on at any particular time and publish it, because it's my right to do that. We have the same rights in Canada as you do for the most part, as far as free speech and right to a fair trial. And like our human rights are pretty basic. But I mean, if you went to the Democratic Republic of North Korea or People's Republic of China, they have wonderful constitutions that tell all of the people what their sacrosanct rights are and how the government is obliged to treat them. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. My feeling is that the best course is just refer people to Larkin Rose. Start watching Larkin Rose. Subscribe to the Rose channel or his website. But it's pretty. You pretty quickly grasp that we the people are guilty of legitimizing this authoritarian structure that's in place, and yeah, the solution is anarchy, which is not no rules, but following the principle of non-aggression. Live and let live. You don't take action against somebody else unless they're taking action against you that's causing you harm. But our overlords don't want to allow that. So, yeah, I don't know where to go from here. Like, this channel is not going to be another Lane Myers carbon copy. I don't own yoga pants. I don't even have a Bluetooth air hammer yet. I think Sassy was promising me one. Like, I'm not going to display that extroverted exhibitionist type presentation. I'll develop more of my personality as we go through, but I do just want to kind of bring you guys stuff of interest, stuff that matters, and then maybe together we can come up with strategies as to how can we better protect ourselves and enforce our rights. Because Lane is responsible for some amazing quotes that I'll never forget. Like he's nicknamed himself Lane Walk the Line Myers. Like he knows the law and he knows how close up to the line he can come without crossing the line, and he goes right up there, and that drives them nuts. And so they accuse him of crossing the line when he in fact hasn't. And I think we need to get more comfortable doing that, getting in the face of public servants, public officials, public employees, and demanding that we be treated with the manner in which they agreed to treat us. We didn't write these documents. We implicitly consent through some social contract. And on the side here, James Freeman's material with his public citizen audits. I don't even know what you call it. Like some people are accusing him of impersonating a government official in Doge, but that's not what's happening at all. He's just treating public entities, public actors with the same rudeness, disdain, dismissive, arrogant, asshole attitude that we get treated with every day. And people hate that. People hate his behavior when seeing public officials abused, allegedly, when that's the same abuse they would tolerate receiving from public entities themselves. And so it's flipping the script. He's a master at it, and he's got the demeanor to do it. Go check out James Freeman's stuff. It is absolutely gold. And kind of along that line, I've noticed it's more recent that I've been paying attention. I think they've been around for a long time, but these troll videos, these troll channels. One of them primarily is Frauditor Troll, who in fact I believe is a Canadian. He probably has an American post office box. Oh yeah, I remember one thing. I was trying to get, I was going to leave a message for Lane at the jail, but I can't access the account or the server to set up an account for payment. So I can't really set him up on, I don't know if he needs commissary, money for snacks and things he may need, or for phone calls. I don't know how that works with the facility he's being held. But I can't even set up an account to make payments or get payments to him. So if there's people that are doing that or collecting, the ability for others to access that, I wasn't able to get through to him on that phone line, that phone number that was posted by Reluctant Prophet and Foshin. So yeah, I mean, this is a public service. On one of his live streams says Lane doesn't need your phone calls. He's getting in touch with the people he needs to get in touch with. It's more get in touch with that judge. And maybe I will look that one up right now. I'll post it after. You don't need to email me this minute. You can come back. I'll put it in the description or in the comments. But yeah, I think if you can support Lane, there is a GoFundMe or GiveSendGo. Just Google it, you'll find it, for Legal Defense Fund. Because really, we all want to help. We all want to see him go free, but at this point, like, what can we do? I don't have ideas. I don't have access. I'm in another country, and I don't have the legal knowledge. A lot of you don't. Like, we're here to learn, and Lane has taught us a lot. I've learned so much about procedure and the process, and even filing and getting the lingo down. You know, the difference between a case and a motion and injunction and this and that. You know, the difference between an evidentiary hearing and a motion hearing and a pretrial hearing. Like it, just learning the language that they speak in the courts, so that if and when you have to appear before a black robe tyrant, that you don't look like a true idiot, but you can represent yourself as a pro se idiot. So it's doable. It takes a lot of work. Like Lane has put in the that's what he's done that we haven't. But as well, going back in time, like he was raised in a family that taught him to stand up for his rights. His dad was Mr. Myers, Lane's dad. I think it might have even been Kent Myers. He had MS and he died young, unfortunately, but he was using marijuana. You know, there was no terminology called medical marijuana to give him comfort and ease his pain and help his nervous system back, you know, in the 80s. And so Lane was born 1982, 83, somewhere in there. So he's about 10 years younger than I am. And you know, back in the 80s, you know, that was still a forbidden substance to have or cultivate or possess. And so he fought that fight right up to traveling from Detroit to Washington, D.C. to stand on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building or wherever it was in protest and light up a joint or whatever the event was. But he instilled in Lane this need to always stand up for yourself. And Lane does have a past, but we some of us are aware of his capability. He is gifted. He was the top of the class. He went to the special gifted school where they were learning university level material, you know, for kids that were age 6, 7, and 8, you know, that weren't going to fit into the public school system. You know, they would have died on the vine there, you know. And so he is a remarkable person with remarkable skills and capabilities that some of us can only imagine or dream of. And so he is built for this battle. Like he's been representing himself, but he has a moral and ethical framework that he can withstand the storm. And so yeah, it's that spirit of the buffalo. You know, you face into the head of the storm and you take the full brunt of it. And, it's amazing to see, but this latest episode with the grand jury indictments, that's somewhat frustrating because it seems like it can be done. Lane has always included us in the journey and kind of coached us on what we can do to help, you know, whether it's sharing or reposting or email this person or let them know how you feel about this. And that's the community rising up to see justice done. And so we need more of that, all these community efforts. I don't know what the strategy is going forward. I think I've kind of said my piece here. I don't know what more needs to be said. I hope we've gone over an hour already just telling the story of Lane Myers, and we haven't even really scratched the surface. So, like, there is more. I'm just giving you the broad strokes. A lot of the details need to be filled in, but I'll let Lane share that. But all this stuff that I'm sharing with you, this is stuff he's told through various live streams and videos, and kind of to hear from start to finish his journey. Like there's other stuff that's, you know, somewhat of interest, but kind of not important to understand where he's at now and what we can do. Oh yeah, another great quote. He said, you know, Lane Myers doesn't break law, he forces the law. And he says it, staring right into the camera with that kind of manic, crazed, lunatic look in his eye, with the "Make America Great Again" hat and the bow tie and the Myers and Associates legal proctology T-shirts. Like he's got it all. He's got the ability to entertain and educate, make us laugh, make us cry. But yeah, he has been handed a raw deal here. He's able to weather the storm. I mean, I'll share this too, and this is kind of really personal in that this is what really opened my eyes as to what Lane is doing. He's at the end of his Nuevo County ordeal, where him and his then girlfriend, they were wanting to set up a mountain bike outfitter and business on right on the thoroughfare where the Dragon Trail biking network was situated in Nuevo County. They had acquired this old red barn, and the location was just perfect, and the facility was ideal to set up this dream business. This was Lane's dream. And within, it seems, a matter of minutes, the locals, the neighbors, they started behaving like a bunch of Karens isn't the word. They started behaving like a bunch of psychotics. And like ravening wolves, and it was crazy to see the response, and so it culminated in again this attempt to bar him from land, and so then he was airing his grievances at city council meetings. He was showing up with that sign that's posted on the wall in his YouTube studio at home that said "Fuck Christopher Wren," a green sign that he was holding up. And he shared a picture on one of his live streams just before Christmas. And he basically revealed, this is take a look at this face. This is the face of a man whose dream has been destroyed. And suddenly I got it. Like, he has nothing to lose. When a man has nothing to lose, like, that's that's a potentially dangerous place to be. So I can relate. In any case, we're going to continue to support him. We're going to do what we can. I'm not taking the lead in this. There's other people that are better equipped and more situated to help or give direction. I just want to put in my 2 cents worth. I do still want to kind of do some coverage on what Reluctant Prophet, Mark Kelly, and kind of Mr. Gold situation is going through, although I saw John Felix kind of interview Mark the other day, and so there's stuff going on there. Mark has been posting lots. It's just there's lots going on with that situation as well. So kind of with that, I think I said what I want to about Lane, and maybe if the chat wants to get involved, we can start looking at what you guys are talking about. So anybody got anything to say? I'll just work my way backwards. 2 minutes. Tammy J, John Felix's live stream, yeah. Like, it's a case that I'm reading Aunt Percy's. I'm going to have to look into this. Interesting. Like, that, I guess, was the call to action from Ocean. And he's in Florida, from what I believe. John Felix is in Florida. There's others that have been trying to provide help. Reluctant Prophet is near Tucson, on the outside of Tucson. Michael Eline, He's California, Texas bar member. He kind of got his legal degree in an unconventional way without going through law school. He's been trying to be a resource, but he's kind of been able to last year and a half. And so when a 3-hour live stream comes on, I can structure my responsibilities around YouTubers' schedules. Like there's stuff I need to get done here, but as long as they get done, it doesn't matter when they get done, just that they get done. And so I've been able to devote time into this, and it has been educational for me. Like it's a matter of study, but this is a matter of public interest for every American. Like I said several minutes ago, Lane has remarked, like, they're doing this to me. Imagine what they'll try on you. And I've seen people get slaughtered. Like I've met Craig Henry. And this is kind of leads into a discussion that needs to be had. And I've alluded to in one of the videos as far as, being equipped to take on this authoritarian structure. It's like you need some skills. Like through Black Lives Matter and the whole George Floyd thing, yeah, all these misdeeds of officers and that cry to defund the police and police brutality, like it's been on the rise. And having a cell phone camera in your pocket, the most deadly weapon known to the U.S. and the Canadian government is an iPhone 15 with a camera. We got to get in the habit of documenting everything and doing all this. But like, I've seen example after example. I don't want to name names, but you think that you know a little bit about the law, and then the law rolls right over you. Okay, well, I've mentioned Craig Henry in Indiana, and so if you're not if you may beat the rap, but you won't beat the ride, is the saying. If you're not skilled to beat both the rap and the ride, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And I've seen people go for the ride, but Lane is like, throw me in jail, bro. It's just going to make my lawsuit bigger against you. It's almost like he's challenging the system to do their worst. Now, this, I think, was an unseen development, and he's kind of got his at least one hand tied behind his back at this point. So we'll see how this ends up. I hope there's more that we can do than just rely on the judge to make the right decision. Trusting the judge to make the right call. How confident do you feel about that, folks? Anybody? Do you think? Let me just go find Ocean's information. I'll link to him because he's got all the links. I'll link to one of his videos. So just bear with me for a second. I'm not going to share a screen because I don't know if this geriatric old laptop is even capable of that. See, I can't even look up a web